Well, good day. Michael Fisher here. Well, good day. Michael Fisher here. Sorry for that intro. Forgot to unplug the cord. It's early in the morning. Here I am. I'm going to talk about authenticity. So you can see everything that I'm doing, the mistakes I make, the unclear and the unscripted conversation that I'm about to enter here. And I'm going to read from my journal this morning to explore authenticity with you. I can't imagine there's a human being that doesn't want to talk about and hear and listen and re-talk about and explore authenticity. So, of course, what does authenticity mean? It might be a first question. I'm not going to start with that boring definition. You can look up AI if you want, and it will tell you about authenticity, or you can listen to a million speeches and talks, seminars, courses on how to be authentic or whatever, right? So you got to know where I'm going here is I'm being rebellious and I'm being black and I'm being weird and I'm being all the things that I am. And now, at this age of my life, 74 almost, pretty proud of that I can be that way and speak and do a recording and be so arrogant as to think someone might actually want to watch this. And even better, pass it on to the rest of the world, and you'll get X number of views. And I might even get some more subscribers on this YouTube channel. Okay, enough of that intro. Let's get authentic in another level or another way. And probably for me, just as you get to know RMF, which I like to call myself, preferably amongst a lot of other names, Merlin, and many other names that I've used, Michael, that there's an archetypal quality to my explorations of authenticity. Well, what I mean archetypal is something bigger than myself. Well, that's not, a lot of people feel that. They might go around saying, yeah, I feel like I'm bigger than myself, but then, maybe I have to make myself small so other people are comfortable around me, etc. Then I also got this latest sort of playful INFJ, which is one of the Myers-Briggs personality types. Again, you can look it up. I don't even remember exactly always what it means, but it's introvert something something. And INFJ is a really rare personality, and there's all kinds of hundreds of videos on talks about what the INFJ personality type, less than 3% of the population. And the I now is the Sigma INFJ taken to the extreme Sigma type. And all of those, I have a part of me, this parallel part of me, which I also think is directly parallel and part of my authenticity to how I am and live and what you're seeing in front of you right now. Okay, so we're kind of in envelopes of envelopes, perhaps Chinese dolls, whatever you want to call it, um, kind of a complex of realities, right? Of modalities of being, of personality types, etc. And if not full personalities, could even call it multiple personalities without even making that pathological or clinical term. We can actually just keep it within that realm. So in some way, I've just given you a whole bunch of entryways, haven't I? As if we were first meeting. And it would be a very bizarre first meeting for me to sit down to you in a theater, for example. You look beside me, I want to be nice and just say hello, because we're sitting really close, kind of elbow to elbow, and I don't even know you, and you're completely strange, and we're going to watch this very strange performance on a black box in the theater, a drama of some kind that we both come to. And all of a sudden, I'm confronted with, do I want to get to know this person? Do they want to get to know me? What's appropriate? What's not appropriate? Happens to be a woman who sat beside me last night in the theater. And that's what I'm going to talk about in my journaling this morning as a practice of for you, and perhaps a model for you, as an exploration of archetypal aspects of your being that we might say is along the path of becoming more authentic. So I'm always into authenticity isn't just a thing that sits and static. Oh, I'm now authentic and I wasn't authentic before. I'm not thinking that's too close to reality of the human experience or phenomenon phenomenology of authenticity. It's more a spectrum of expansions and contractions of what we might call the authentic path, journey. And it involves growth and development. Yes, it does. And it also just revolves around a state of changing state experiencing. So reading my journal and my journaling is probably the most authentic practice I have. Maybe for some people, it's doing yoga, being in your body, being embodied, being in church, being with your guru, being high on psilocybin, going for a walk in nature is when you say, I would probably locate myself now as feeling very authentic. But all of those are not necessarily that I just mentioned a living authenticity in connection with certainly other humans, but it can certainly be more than humans. And that's why me reading a journal to you and you being able to interact with this, I do feel a sense of presence with you. Um, I guess after doing 220 some of these videos in 7 years plus, I have that relationship with the screen. Um, and that's because I know there are people going to be watching and you are watching is kind of my approach. So again, I'm an artist and I'm a creative, weird guy, as I said. I have this black side of me, and I'll talk about what that actually means later in this reading of a couple pages from my journal, and I'll stop and maybe comment on it. Let's swing in. Enough intro. October 10th, 2025. Writing in black ink, printing in capital letters as I do and have done since I was in grade 7, when my school teacher said, "Your writing is atrocious." Rather than correct my writing, try harder for her, and her attitude, which I found very judgmental, not very helpful, I decided to print in capitals, and I do to this day. Start the journal October 10th with, I am this. No, I'm not. I am this. No, I'm not. I am this. No, I'm not. And then I have on the side, path to authenticity. I had the sense this morning that Angelique's performance, we went to the theater last night, a performative artist, very radical, black, feminist, African, Canadian, American. I think she's actually from Dominican Republic or something like that. And she did a very interesting performance. I had the sense this morning that Angelique performance last night was a type of voluntary performative schizoidal praxis. Oh, that's the term I used in 2003. I named it, I claimed it as part of my dissertation methodology. And of which was another way of saying a deep dive, which was another way of saying that the best way to play in the culture of fear, which was my subject matter for my dissertation, that's what I was studying, was through and is through artworking, artworkings. As a whole other way into performing terrorism, fearism, and the basic living, the wounded slash healing of an unresolvable culture of fear. Oh, so I met Janet, somebody, dot, 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 last night. My partner came up. I had been sitting next to this person who sat, and I didn't know who they were, right in the center of the theater. My partner introduces her to me after, because my partner was not there at the time. And all of a sudden, here we go. This person beside me, this stranger in the black box of a theater, they had been telling me about my partner, about this powerhouse of a woman they'd met the other day, an art therapist in town, who is bringing therapy and arts and people together. And that there's this reality, of course, it's all women virtually in that group. I wondered if I could belong. Then I chose not to go. And then there's this interesting question that's there, people meeting in town, this place, a small little town we live in. They're powerful kinds of women. And this Janet so quickly jumps in as soon as they're introduced to me and moves into my space even closer than sitting beside in small theater seats, moves into my space of the theater. And she feels she had the ticket to sit right there and come into my space, sat on the other side of me and introduced us. Janet immediately put her hand over my arm with a gesture of being warm and kind and connecting. Held her hand there. This is like our first exchange, remember? I find it fascinating. And at the same time, warm and connecting, I felt a gesture of domination by their leaning first, leaning into it, into the connection with me, a kind of minimizing at the same time of who I am without them knowing who I am, other than I'm the partner of the person they know, which had met at an earlier meeting, which is fine. But given within 30 seconds to meet in public like this, one wonders where that would have gone with her and where there would have been our first border clash, a conflict between her and I, and or perhaps sincere intimacy, authenticity. Regardless, I could see her being, quote, a therapist in some kind of way, where she felt a need to ask questions and show some curiosity. And so she asks, as she had heard, "Oh, so you're an art therapist," she says to me. And I say, "No, I've been involved in art therapeutics for many years." But then I corrected her and said, "I'm an educator." And Janet responded with the classic response, "So what kind of educator?" Which AKA means, "What do you teach?" I respond, "I am a liberation educator," I say. She is somewhat taken aback. I again rescue her from what the hell does one say after having been introduced to a stranger in a small town who claims that they are a liberation educator and says it so confidently, as I am capable. I said immediately something like, "I don't fool around." And at that moment, the performance began. And it began with Angelique, this performer, sitting at a set of drums in the middle of a black box with the spotlights on. And she just starts whacking away on these drums that are highly mic'd and high volume, pretty interrupting of the conversation I was having with this woman beside me. Okay, you get the picture. Anyways, it was impossible to continue talking to her. I just kept wondering if they really want to know me after asking those two questions of me. Are you what kind of educator are you? Are you an art therapist, right? Was the first question. And then me saying I don't fool around. It really is a huge, slippery abyss just opened up of two strangers potentially becoming into an authentic conversation, if that would have been allowed. It turns out I never got to see her for the rest of the evening. The performance was so powerful, everybody was pretty silent at the end, and we all kind of walked away in a daze and went back into the main part of the theater in the lights. And then there was a discussion, and she was in that circle of discussion with me, but we didn't connect after that. But I'm journaling on it this morning, aren't I? October 10th. And then I started writing. If you really want to know me further, you best ask yourself. I'm speaking to her. not necessarily herself as a person, a personality, a professional, which she is, a therapist. But you best want to ask yourself, your soul, are you really interested to go the next step and put that out there of your soul for examination with this liberation educator? Moi. And exchange, because liberation still means something to me, moi, to us humans as souls, SOULS. So, yeah, soul talk. We were beginning soul talk, and we could have gone further. Would we have? That would have been the question. And what would have got in the way of us not going into soul talk? I actually would have been prepared to do it. I'm so ready for that kind of talk in my life. I'm so ready for that kind of authenticity. I'm using the word soul here, and let's see, I'll probably come back to it after I finish this next half page of the journal. Soul talk is going to a whole different level of engagement. The INFJ, the Sigma personality types, don't fool around, do they? It's like I am a Black Panther, um, Black Jaguar. That fits better. Underneath this mask of a human being. And I'm right there below the surface of inauthenticity. Bring out my Black Jaguar, and then we can be in a conversation authentically. Are you a Black Jaguar? A melanin genophenotype of the jaguar with spots? There's a melanin type that is pure black, found in South America. And yes, you are going to watch it all, this voluntary performative schizoidal praxis, the Black Jaguar praxis, practicing the Black Jaguar, not the car, not the cat, not the mistaken facsimile, the fake, not a Black Panther movement individual. I'm white. And I thought to myself, so interesting. Yes, indeed, I would have liked to have joined the Black Panthers when they were around and everything they stood for. But would I have liked the Black Panthers and their movement? I would have been critical of. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't have wanted to be part of them. So I could write a poem, I suppose, on authenticity. It would be a long one. It would be pretty close to my journaling. I journal every day for 2, 3, 4 hours, decades and decades and decades. I don't fool around. The Black Jaguar doesn't fool around. In a way, I could also have said, instead of liberation educator, I could have said medicine man. That's who I am. No, you're not. I could have said, yeah, that's who I am. No, you're not. You're a liberation educator. No, you're not. Yes, I am. No, you're not. This is the slippery edge and an edge of the edge. I feel I live on the edge of the edge. The Black Jaguar represents that. And you can imagine Black Jaguar. You can see films on it if you wish, pictures and books. But right now, this morning, I really wished I could have said to the woman next to me, thanks for talking. Thanks for asking the questions about me, for your curiosity. Let's explore my Black Jaguar and your Black Jaguar, if you wish. couple of terms, those two, medicine man, liberation educator, come close to what is in my, what is in your soul. Not to say everybody has the black jaguar as the immediate image, metaphor, animal, creature in your soul, but I do. And if I do, in some way, you coming in contact with me is going to bring up your having to be with the black jaguar and in with the black jaguar if we're to have authenticity. Something like that. Again, these are on my mind, right? I'm just journaling here. There's no essay, there's no conformist, clear questioning, answering, other than the sort of poetic scurrying around that I'm doing this morning. Even without having to talk about the soul directly, I do feel something and somewhere in my background, my ancient past, or some parallel universe is another existence that I am living. I am such a kind of dark being, a soul life operating and living. I'm so still searching for Black Jaguar woman, self, capital S. Not unlike what Angelique in her performance, through and in and about, or at least touching this parallel, this yet undiscovered side. I slip and slip into something else. So it's a lot of changing perspectives, slipping in, putting on new costumes, imagining this black jaguar costume. And see, when I use that term black jaguar, I do not mean all of the cliche images. And so that's big part of authenticity for me is how to have a conversation, how to write as I do, to make art as I do, to teach and talk in public as I do, without cliche continually, right? Cliche symbol, ism. When symbols become so oppressive, they have too much meaning. They're too loaded. They're too saturated to allow people to be with that metaphor, right? The black jaguar. And as much as I'm saying I am a black jaguar, then I bring in that poetic line as I started off the journaling with, no, you're not. That is it. That's what I'm trying to communicate with you. If we could get into an authentic conversation in whatever form we use, could be playing in a band together. And I played in bands for 40 plus years. So I know the feeling of what it feels like to be in claiming yourself, making your music, and at the same time, you're in relation in this really radical way that you're sort of in between with the other and not just here on this plane. Music takes you to another plane and you become something more than yourself, right? So that's why I say every time I claim I am this, that makes me authentic, so called. Then I follow it with the phrase, and I'm saying it's kind of like a dictum to say, then I am not. And even if I don't say it and then be in conversation, wouldn't it be great to have a dialogue partner where I am this? And we go, oh, are you? And then you say, and I am not. And I go, oh, and you're not? Curiously. Or even, no, you're not. See, let's be honest, let's be authentic, and allows that opening from getting stuck in, I am this, and then defending it. And then I feel as I'm a listener, trying to connect with this person, I have to completely, agree with her category or their category of what they are. I am this. Well, that's the moment I know, no, that's your cloak. See, that's your jaguar. That's your pelt, your fur coat. That's your mask. So, yeah, A lot of people are talking today about masking, or people with autism on the spectrum, for example, are talking about masking themselves to be normal. And you could talk about Black people having to mask themselves to be white people in a Black body, all kinds. You can look at gender, class, race, all the various oppressions. And so, liberation, I say a liberation educator, I am that and I am not. So, at the same time, I could say I'm a liberation educator and I am oppressed. I'm the furthest thing from being a liberation educator, actually. If you look at what I've actualized in the world to actually bring about liberation, it's so minimal. I think this is just something you come to realize when you get really in the older 70s to 80s, which I'm moving into very soon, if I am around that long and live on this planet for that long, another 5, 6, 7 years. Going to be interesting where I'll come to about authenticity, but today was just an intro to that. Glad to share this with you. Look forward to your comments in the conversation. Pass this on to others who are perhaps interested in authenticity. See you soon.